There's nothing like spending a day out on the trail, having an awesome adventure, finding that perfect camp spot, having a great meal, and then hanging around a campfire with family and friends, sharing stories and reminiscing about the day's events. I love hanging around the campfire. Unfortunately, over the last couple of years, there have been many campfire bans in a lot of locations. However, some of those places will still allow you to use an above ground propane fire pit, like the 3 that I have here. These are 3 different propane campfire pits that I've purchased and have been using over the years. And today in this video, I'm going to share with you the things I like about them, some of my criticisms about them, and we'll talk about the benefits of propane versus a wood fire. There's some things to talk about here that I think you might find very interesting. Stay tuned. Welcome to TrailRecon, I'm Brad, and it never fails. Anytime I post a video and we're hanging out at camp and I'm showing one of these propane campfire pits, I get a lot of questions in the comments about it, and I thought it's finally time to take a moment and just talk about each one of these that I've used over the years. Now, let me mention that this is not a sponsored video. I purchased all 3 of these and I'm under no obligation to say anything nice or any criticisms about them, but I do find these very practical. I love a campfire, the smell of it, the crackle, but there's a lot of practicality into having a propane campfire pit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a moment and we're gonna talk about each one of these, some of the things I like, some of my criticisms. Then I'm gonna take them out in the backyard, we'll light them up and we'll see how they perform against one another. And then I will give you my general impressions about what the pros and cons of using one of these is, and I'll tell you which one I like the most. So let's start off with talking about this big bad boy right here. The 3 different propane campfire pits we are looking at today are the Outland Living Firebowl, the Camco Little Red Fire Camp, and the Ignik Fire Can. There are several other fire pits out on the market that I may test in the future, but these just happen to be the ones I've been using recently, and I believe each one of these have their own unique features that make them suited for different types of situations. The first one I'm going to talk about today is the largest in this comparison, and it is the Outland Living Firebowl. This is a large, sturdy, well-constructed steel fire pit, and this was the first propane fire pit I ever purchased, and it really changed my mindset about the benefits of using one of these at camp. It measures 24 inches in diameter and is about 13 inches tall. So if you're going to pack this in the back of your vehicle, know that it's going to take up some real estate. Just for an example, here is how much space 2 bundles of firewood take up in the back of my Ford Bronco compared to the Outland Living Firebowl and a small propane tank. So if space is a commodity when packing for your camping trips, this might not be the best option as far as size. If you have a truck bed or a large trailer, then maybe this size pit will fit your needs perfectly. I did put this fire pit on my scale to see what it weighed with the rocks, and as you can see, I had to put it in upside down just in order to make it work on the scale. And of course, this made a huge mess. However, this is the heaviest unit in this comparison, weighing in at just under 21 pounds with the rocks. For reference, 1 bundle of firewood weighs approximately 18 pounds. So that's pretty interesting. I also think it's important to mention that most of the lava rocks used in these fire pits create a bit of dust and debris. So having some kind of container to store them in is highly recommended. I did purchase the optional travel bag for the Outland, and while it was a little thin, it does do the job very well. The Outland Firebowl does have a solid lid that fits over the top, but it isn't secured with any latches or straps to hold it in place, which is something I wish it did have. The Outland Fire Pit retails for $199, but if you opt to get the travel bag, which I recommend, it's just over $213. This fire pit is well constructed, and it has taken a bit of abuse on my trips, throwing stuff on top of it and being banged around inside my Jeep and trailer off-road. It's held up really well. It is rated at 58,000 BTUs an hour. And if you're not familiar with what that means, like me before doing this comparison, a BTU is a British thermal unit, and it represents the amount of energy that is required to raise 1 pound of water 1 degree. So now you know. The Outland has a 10-foot pre-attached hose for connecting to the propane bottle, which is the longest hose in this comparison, and I like that it allows you to keep the propane bottle further away from the fire pit than the others in this unit that we are looking at. Lastly, the one thing that I really like about the Outland is that it has a fuel regulator knob on the front of the unit, whereas the others have their regulators located on the hose near the bottle. Having the regulator in this location makes adjusting more convenient and a little safer. Overall, I really like the Outland and would recommend it to anyone that is looking for a quality campfire pit and isn't worried about storage space. Next up is the Camco Little Red Campfire Pit, which is a well-constructed portable unit that is a much more convenient travel size than the Outland. With the lid, it measures 13 inches in diameter and 9.8 inches tall and weighs just over 15 pounds. Here's what it looks like packed in the back of the Bronco. A much more reasonable size for packing in the back of a vehicle, in my opinion. It has a solid lid with a handle that makes carrying a breeze. My only complaint is the very, very cheap and thin latches. I have had to adjust, bend, and snap these back into place more times than I could count. I wish it had better latches. One thing I really like about the Little Red is it does not have lava rocks. It has a realistic single-piece looking log that hasn't created any dust. There's also another plate below the log, and these work well in creating a natural-looking campfire. This unit is rated at 65,000 BTUs, putting it in first place in this comparison. However, as much as I like how much heat this puts out, in my experience, if you run this fire pit at full blast, you can expect to use up a significant amount of propane quickly. I typically run this at about 1/4 to 1/2 output, and it does a great job. The Little Red retails for about $199 and does not require you to purchase an extra travel case. The propane hose is attached to the unit, and it's 8 feet long and is easily wound around the base of the fire pit when stowed away. And as previously mentioned, this one has a regulator that is located at the end of the hose near where it connects to the propane bottle. I would prefer a regulator near the fire pit just for ease of use. The Camco Little Red Campfire Pit has been the one out of these three that I have used the most over the last year, and it really is holding up well. I like the size and the amount of heat it is able to generate. I just wish they would do something about those latches. The last unit we are looking at today is the Ignik Fire Can. This is a small, compact campfire pit packaged up in an ammo can style box. There are a few manufacturers making similar ones like this, and these fire pits make for a great do-it-yourself project if you are handy, but the Fire Can comes packaged and ready to go for $149. The fire pit measures 15.5 inches long, 6.5 inches deep, and 8.5 inches tall. With its 4 legs extended, it stands 10.75 inches tall. The Fire Can weighs in at 11 pounds. However, it didn't come with any lava rocks, which I added, and that bumped up the weight to 15 pounds. Now, Ignik does sell some fire rocks, which you can add for about $20, but I just grabbed some lava rocks at my local hardware store. The size and shape of this unit makes packing this up in a vehicle much more convenient than the round ones we just looked at. The legs that fold down have nice rubber pads on their feet, and it keeps it from sliding around. And there is a sturdy handle for carrying the unit and a standard ammo can style latch, which keeps everything nice and secure. The only drawback is that the hose adapter sticks out from one side of the can, so I've had to be careful how I pack this when putting it inside the Jeep. The Fire Can puts out 3,800 BTUs, the lowest of the three in this comparison. It has mesh sides which help with the transfer of the heat, so for 1 or 2 people huddled closely around it, it puts out plenty of heat to stay warm on a cold night. This fire pit has the shortest hose of the three at only 5 feet long, but that's to accommodate the ability to store the hose inside the can. I appreciate that it all fits together in a nice little package, but I would prefer a slightly longer hose. Similarly to the Little Red fire pit, the Fire Can also has the regulator on the end of the hose near the propane tank. One other feature I do like is that there is a small access hole to light the fire pit on the side, so you are not reaching over and lighting it from the top as the propane is catching flame. Overall, this is a great compact fire pit. If you are doing a lot of solo camping or you don't mind huddling close together around this small unit, it's a great option without sacrificing a lot of storage space. So there is a close-up look of these 3 fire pits. Now, before I go light them off, a quick mention about propane. I have used all 3 of these types of propane bottles with these fire pits, and there are pros and cons to each. I don't recommend using the small green bottles you can buy at the store with a fire pit. While you can get an adapter and make it work, I found that the bottles and the regulators seem to easily freeze up after about 40 minutes of use. And you need a few bottles to get through the night, and by not using these, you are saving the landfills a little. Now I have both the Ignik 5-pound bottle that has a nice storage case that I purchased when I got the Fire Can, and I also have a 10-pound bottle that I take with me when we are towing the trailer. I found that how much propane you use depends on how high you have the regulator open and how long you run it for at night. Typically, when I run the Little Red, which burns more propane than any of these, with the regulator about half open, when I'm using a 10-pound bottle, it will last me about 3 nights if I run it for just under 3 hours. I almost never run any of these fire pits at the fully open setting because it just uses too much propane. There's a lot of variables about how long the propane will last, but if you're wise, you can make it last a while. Okay, so now that you've seen each one of these up close and personal, what do you say we take them out back, we turn them on, see what kind of flames we can get with these things. All 3 of these are easy to set up and provide a quick source of instant heat, much faster than trying to get a campfire going on a cold, wet night. Plus, it's smoke and spark-free heat. The heat difference between the 3 of them is really only noticeable when you have them set at their very highest setting. The Little Red puts out the most heat, and honestly, it's a bit overkill. The Outland has a nice wide dispersed heat radius, and I think it's in the sweet spot if you have a large group of folks huddled around it. The Fire Can is great, but you've got to sit pretty close to it to get the full effects. All right, now that you've seen all 3 of these in action and we've talked about the specs on each one of them, let's just talk about propane fire pits in general. One, they're expensive. I mean, you can buy a lot of wood for the price of one of these guys. However, this is something you're going to keep for a while. I mean, I've had this one for almost 2 years now, and these are pretty durable. They're going to hold up. So in the long term, are you going to save money? Well, probably not. I mean, I bought a bundle of firewood, and that firewood cost me about how much it would cost me to fill up my propane tank. So I'm not really going to save any money in the long run unless firewood or propane goes way up. Who knows what could happen. But I think it's a good investment because there are a lot of places where you can't have campfires. And so being able to bring one of these along and light it up, which one, you get instant heat. It turns on right away, and at night, you just shut it off and go to bed. There's no shoveling it with dirt and dousing it with water. You just turn it off and go to bed. You know, oftentimes we'll hang out at camp and we'll be like, well, who's putting out the fire? Oh, you got it, I'm out, I'm going to bed. This way, you just turn it off and you go. It's no big deal. So there's some big benefits to having one of these. Now, there's also the fact that there's no smoke. So how many times have you sat around a campfire and you've got to start moving your chair because the wind changed, you get smoke blowing in your face? With these, you don't have that problem. Also, there's no sparks coming off of these guys, so you don't have to worry about something catching fire. That's a big benefit. Now, propane versus wood availability, well, they're both pretty accessible. I mean, most of the places that we travel cater to RVs somewhere in the vicinity, and usually they have propane filling stations. However, wood is easier to access, especially if you're able to use wood at the place you're camping. Some places don't allow that, so sometimes you'll have to haul it in, but that's something to think about. The other thing is, when you use this propane fire pit and the propane bottle, when you're done with it, you still have to haul it home. If you went out and burned all your wood, well, you're not carrying that wood home. So there's pros and cons to both. I think there's some advantages. I like having these, and I'm going to continue to use them. And my favorite out of these, well, I like this one a lot. It's a good large size, so gathering a few people around it is perfect. I like this one because it just puts out a lot of heat, and it's just a nice little compact kit. I don't like the latches, but we talked about that. And this one is perfect for, well, just me. If I just need something small and compact in the Jeep, this one works well. But which one do I like the most? Definitely this one. It puts out a lot of heat. So if Regina and I are out there and it's a cold night, this thing is going to warm us right up, and it's a good little compact design. So there you have it, guys. I hope you have enjoyed checking these out. Please make sure you go over and check us out over at TrailRecon.com. We've got some Adventure Blend coffee over there. We've got all kinds of swag, and we've got all kinds of gear for your next adventure. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.